economists are now predicting that child poverty, the rate of that is going to go up. Many of these states that are now banning abortion do not have paid family leave. They do not have the extended Medicaid for after giving, women who give birth. So if you could explain a little bit more about how you're going to fight for these disadvantaged women who wanted to get an abortion, they couldn't because of the state they live in, and their children who are growing up in poverty.
Well, we've been fighting for these women and their families for 50 years. It's in fact the abortion industry and what we hear on campuses all the time that tells women that abortion is a simple solution to all their problems. When in fact we believe in helping those who suffer, not eliminating somebody who may potentially suffer. And I think you help suffering, you help alleviate the suffering. You don't say, well, we're going to solve that by just prescribing abortion, because abortion doesn't end poverty. Abortion doesn't take her out of that abusive relationship that she finds herself in. That's harder work. That's walking alongside someone and seeking social justice with that person. And that's what we've been doing through the Pregnancy Center movement for nearly 50 years.
But what if, well, first of all, I hear what you're saying, but the reality is, I think it's nearly half 500,000 kids end up in foster care. Now, I don't know how many of those were kids that, the mother wanted to abort and came from a disadvantaged home. But the reality is, you say that you're working on this, but so many kids still end up abused, neglect in the broken foster care system. And the reality is the governments in these states do not have the resources on the books, such as paid family leave, such as the extended Medicaid, to help with these situations.
We can definitely talk about those policies, but the question is the solution to children in foster care to kill them? No one would argue in our society that because a child's in foster care, therefore their life is unworthy of living. And that's the point that we're making in the pro-life movement every single day when we argue for protection at conception. That just because someone may suffer in their life, it doesn't mean we should snuff them out of existence, that we should violently end their life when they've done nothing wrong. And I think that's the important part to start the conversation.
And I want to get to that because you bring up two important points, your view that life begins at conception, but also your view that even bans like in Missouri, which bans abortion even in the case of rape or incest, that you support that. So under those laws, a 12-year-old could be raped and still be forced to carry that baby to term. Is that what you want? Is that the kind of thing you support?
I absolutely don't want 12-year-olds to be raped.
Right, but
and I
that
don't
happens.
want 12-year-olds
Unfortunately,
to
that's
be
a reality of the world we live in.
Absolutely. We definitely see these tragedies, and I think we need to do a better job in enforcing penalties on these people who commit heinous crimes.
But do you think the 12-year-old should carry that?
But I don't believe in discrimination against a human being based on the circumstances of their conception, because we don't issue birth certificates in our nation and give gold stars or silver stars as to how you were conceived. We say, no, you are a human being with rights and you should be protected.
So what I hear you saying is
that's what we believe as a movement. And I actually think you should speak with folks like my friend Ryan Baumberger, who was actually conceived in rape, whose mother made a courageous decision to place him with an adoptive family, and talk with the tens of thousands of Americans who are living today who have families who were conceived in sexual assault. That every single time we talk about abortion in America, we bring these human beings up as if their lives don't matter and they don't have value. And I simply reject that.
Yeah, and that's not what we're saying. The question was about, should a 12-year-old carry a baby to term if that 12-year-old was raped? Clearly you think, yes, that is the case. And we have talked to many people who were born even though their mother was raped, or even though their mother considered having an abortion and chose not to. We've talked to people all across the spectrum. But you are arguing that your Catholic faith dictates that the life begins at the moment of conception. There is a synagogue in Florida that has filed suit claiming that in Jewish law, abortion is required if necessary to protect the health, mental, or physical well-being of the woman. Why should your religious beliefs trump theirs?
It's not my faith that tells me that life begins at conception. It's science.
Well, there's plenty of scientists, as you know.
96% of biologists agree that the moment of conception, a unique human life comes into existence. There's no other moment when that DNA codes. Where are you getting
the 96% of biologists? Where does that come from specifically?
That's a study from Chicago, University of Chicago.
Okay, my producer will look that up because I've read many opinions preparing for this segment of doctor. I just want to be clear with our viewers so
But
that
that's science. You can debate whether or not that human life has value. My faith tells me that human
is
life
no
has
consensus
value,
among scientists.
and that faith tells me that human life should be protected. But science tells us at the moment of conception, when egg and sperm unite, a unique genetic code comes into existence that's never existed before and will never exist again. That is, in fact, the moment when a human being comes into existence. That is indisputable.
There's not a consensus among scientists. There is absolutely not.
Well, they should be scientists if there's not a consensus.
Well,
That's
and let me walk you
indisputable.
through what many scientists have said. I've read all sides of it today.
Sure.
I've read from various scientists. First of all, there is a general view that a baby, a fetus, reaches viability between, I believe, it is 24 to 28 weeks in the
that's
womb. There is a view that when the egg it meets the sperm and it becomes an embryo, that it is just a cluster of cells. That it is it is not.
I'm just a cluster of cells. What makes me different?
I know,
than
and I've
that
heard
embryo?
you say that, but I'll tell you right now. So what about it? And this is, I am not taking a position, but I like to challenge and
No,
test
this is fun. This is
views.
great.
Yeah, exactly. I think that
I like
it's
having
important.
this discussion. This is important.
So if a woman goes in, she can't get pregnant on her own. So in a lab, they have to take, they have to do it scientifically. In a lab, they have to put the egg and the sperm together to create an embryo. In the process of trying to get this woman pregnant, a doctor destroys the embryos because that's just what happens. Is that doctor then a murderer?
Yes, doctors ending human life. We don't,
So a doctor
define it as
trying to get a
murder
woman
in our
pregnant,
code, but that is ending
So
human life.
so IVF clinics should be banned.
It depends on the procedure that is used
But
in
sometimes
IVF.
that's just what happens.
But there's
That's
also the question of
process.
intentionality as well.
I'm not saying.
I had
saying
a question posed to me recently on campus where someone said, well, if a woman's having a miscarriage, do you consider her being a murderer? Absolutely not. That's something that is unintended and is sad. And just because if a woman may be at risk for miscarriage, we don't consider her a murderer
Right,
because she has an unfortunate situation.
And that wasn't
intention
my
is not
question.
there.
And I see what you're saying, but I'm talking about a doctor who is trying to help a woman get pregnant, and through the process, embryos have to be destroyed. That doctor is a murderer, even though
No embryos should have to ever be destroyed in IVF.
So, okay, well, it does happen. That's just the bottom line. And also, there are so many embryos frozen as well that these IVF clinics oversee. So, what about that?
And I think that's what we've been talking about, intentionality. I would say that when we talk about pro-life laws, this isn't even discussed. So when we're talking about what's next in a post-Roe America, the discussion of IVF isn't even on the table. We're talking about ending human life intentionally, dismembering children who have limbs, whose arms and legs have to be removed from a woman's body and put back together. That's what we're talking about when we're talking about seeking laws to protect women against the predatory abortion facility.
What about the